My brothers and sisters, we listen attentively to the good news that has been recorded for us by Mark. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he stayed close to the sea. One of the synagogue officials named Jairus came forward. Seeing Jesus, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Please come lay your hand on her that she may get well and live." Jesus went off with him, and a large crowd followed, pressing all about him. There was a woman afflicted with hemorrhages for 12 years. She had suffered greatly at the hands of many doctors, and she had spent all that she had. Yet she had not helped, even it all simply grew worse. She had heard about Jesus, came up behind him in the crowd, and touched the tassel of his cloak. She said to herself, "If I but touch his clothes, I shall be cured." Immediately her blood dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Jesus, aware at once of the power that had gone out for him, turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who has touched my clothes?" His disciples said to him, "You see how the crowd is passing and pressing about you, and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" He looked around to see who had done it. The woman, realizing what had happened to her, approached in fear and trembling. She fell down before Jesus and told him the entire truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." While he was still speaking, people from the synagogue's official's house arrived, and they said, Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" Disregarding the message that was reported, Jesus said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid. Have faith." He did not allow anyone to accompany him inside except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When he arrived at the house of the synagogue official, he caught sight of a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why this commotion and wailing? This child is not dead, simply asleep." They, of course, ridiculed him. Then he put them all out. He took along the child's father and mother and those who were with him and entered the room where the child was. He took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The girl, a child of 12, arose immediately and walked around. At that they were utterly astounded. He gave strict orders that no one should know this, and said that they should give her something to eat. The gospel of Christ. Praise be to you, O Christ. Please be seated. I really like this Jesus person. He wants people to eat. I think that's a good thing, you know? It's just, we raised her up. Oh, let's get her a yodel and a glass of milk, and let's see how she does. So where do we start with this? There's literally hours that we can talk about in and through this entire text, and clearly we don't have hours, maybe just 2, all right? So just 2 hours. It'll be a short sermon today. Kidding. But really there is 2 major things that are happening here, all sort of at the same time. First of all, Jairus is a synagogue leader, which means he's a leader of the religion, if you will, the temple, the church, if you will, in his area. He is recognized by everyone in the crowd. They know him to be from the synagogue, and so they also know that most of the synagogues at this point in time are not really pleased with Jesus because of how he is preaching, how he is talking, especially how he's talking to the leadership of the religion of the day, of the Hebrews, of the Jews. And so Jairus comes up, and notice he is in a public venue. He is publicly visible, and he comes and he gets on his knees before Jesus, and he begs Jesus to come and simply lay his hand on his daughter because he believes, because of just the rumors, what they're saying. Everyone is saying that this Jesus can speak a word and people's realities are different, that he is able to touch people and they are changed. Jairus doesn't know Jesus. He just knows what he has heard. And in hearing that, Jairus goes absolutely convinced. Why? Because Jairus has also probably run out of every other option. See, Jairus, being a synagogue leader, knows everybody. So his daughter's probably getting the best of care, the best medical care of the day. You know, him, his wife, his family are providing. They're doing everything they possibly can, but in the end, when there is nothing else and nowhere else to go to, Jairus comes and publicly begs and lets everyone know that he is putting his faith in this person of Jesus. Now, mind you, this is a Jewish audience. They're watching a synagogue leader fall before Jesus. I've shared with you time and time again about the times that we go down to see the Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center. It is not one of my more pleasant experiences. There are literally 20,000 people on 56th Street, whatever it is. I mean, it is packed. And, you know, I'm a little bit larger than the average bear, you know. I take big steps. People have to get out of my way or I step on them in the process. And, you know, here we are, jam-packed, people packing and pressing in all about me. I hate it. Absolutely. I'm just not that guy. We have a store by us that we went to the other day, and I was begging my wife, can we please go early? Because this store, which has very good food, their aisles are like this big. Okay, I don't know why, but they wanted to pack as much food as they possibly can in. The aisles are this big, and for you to get from one end of the aisle to the other, you have to pass through like 20 people in this packed aisle. I hate it. Just hate being pressed upon. So this is the image, if you will, that I want you to hold about the people now who are gathered around Jesus as Jesus is going to Jairus' house. Why? Jairus has just asked Jesus to come. People all heard that. Jairus is asking Jesus to touch his daughter to cure him. And so everyone is going along. Why? To see how the story ends up. Is Jesus actually able to do this? It's a miracle. Why wouldn't we want to go see what this is? So the crowd is pressing and packing because they don't want to miss anything. And so they're coming in. Now, a woman who is bleeding obviously has, significant health issues, and for the day, they tried everything, and it says, Mark makes it clear, that she has spent every bit of money and resources that she has talking to every possible doctor to try to be cured. There is no one. There is nothing. She is simply by herself. Now, mind you, here's the problem with bleeding. One is that it's a medical condition that makes you incredibly unhealthy, even for this day. But secondly, it breaks all of the religious laws. So now she's not only separated from herself, if you will, because she is sick, but now her family cannot be around her because they would be defiled. Coming in touch with a person, being around a person who is bleeding causes defilement, which means they would not be able to worship or celebrate Passover or celebrate, their holy day. They wouldn't be able to go to temple. They wouldn't be able to go to synagogue. But also now recognize that because of this, religiously, she is also now significantly ill, emotionally, spiritually. Because she's not allowed to go where the rest of her community goes because she has this ailment. So this woman is not only suffering because she is bleeding and there's this physical ramification, she has lost everything she has financially, but she has also lost family and she's lost her religious community. And according to their law, it is a clear and direct sign that she has done something that has God's ire, and so she is being punished. This is the fourth aspect. She is being punished for something she has done in her life. So, this woman is not allowed around to be people at all. She's not allowed to be in close proximity. Her presence makes everyone impure. If she is found to be making other people impure, she could be stoned to death. In other words, this woman's not in the best situation in any way, shape, or form. She has significant challenges. But notice what happens here. She simply says to herself, if I could but touch his garb. I just want to touch, in one of the other Gospels, it says just the tassel of his cloak. But mind you, remember, Rockefeller Center Christmas tree crowd, this is the crowd that is packed around Jesus. And she simply no longer cares. She no longer cares what people think or what happens to her, because her life is an absolute mess anyway. She doesn't belong anywhere. She's not feeling well. No one can help her. She is abandoned. She just doesn't care anymore. So she presses through this crowd, and imagine, if you will, a lunge at the end, simply to try to touch his cloak. Both Jairus and this woman end up with this courage, this deep sentiment that this person, Jesus, is the answer to where they are. And mind you, it's not as though they haven't tried everything in their power first to try and remedy this situation. They have. They've tried everything, but nothing else is working. So when it's all said and done and they find themselves, without any opportunity, without any other alternative direction to go, they decide that Jesus is the one that they are going to go to, and they go to any length possible. One, Jairus, embarrassing himself, a synagogue leader, simply does not kneel before a supposed rabbi. Jesus has no training. He has no background. He's not considered a rabbi, hasn't been trained in any of their schools. Jesus is just an itinerant preacher. He goes and kneels before this itinerant preacher, nobody, and begs for help. This other woman just doesn't care, and she presses through this crowd and goes forth and touches the hem, the cloak that Jesus is wearing. And ultimately, in the end, both accomplish what it is that they want, because Jairus' daughter is raised from the dead, and this woman is made whole. There are two things here that I need you to pay attention to that we don't understand in our culture, but clearly for Jesus, it was absolutely true. The woman touching Jesus made Jesus impure. Jesus is trained. He's trained as a Jew. He's trained in a religious system. He thinks a certain way. He is trained in a certain way. But he does not act upon his training, because the person, the woman, is more important. The woman, the individual, is more important than the law. So she comes forth and she touches him, and now he is impure. But notice when he turns around, he doesn't yell at her. Why, you unclean, have just made me ritually impure, that now I have to go through the ritual of purification, which then would take some time for him to go and to do that. He doesn't address any of that. He simply turns to her and responds by recognizing that this woman has gone entirely out of her way and has risked everything, including her life, simply to touch Jesus. The second thing I want you to pay attention to is that when Jesus enters Jairus' daughter's house, before she gets cookies and milk, when he enters into that house, he touches her, takes her by the hand and says, Talitha cum, get up, little girl. Jesus, by touching a dead body, has become ritually unclean. But recognize the law, the scriptures, are not more important than the individual people who are coming to him asking for help. And that is a lesson in our society that we simply have to pay attention to. That this Jesus understands what the law says, but the law is not more important than the individual encounters with the people who need him most. And as church, it's not up for us to always be bashing other people. We should be the ones risking impurity by accepting them and by reaching out our hands and holding them and bringing them to life. Notice that when Jesus turns and talks to the woman, it is the first time in probably a very long time that anyone has recognized her or anyone has talked to her. She's an outcast. She's not around society. She's not around people. Jesus, besides restoring her health, has also restored her dignity by recognizing her and holding a conversation with her. The girl in the upper room, I love when he comes in because there's all this commotion. And what does Mark say that he does? He just puts them all out. And you can sort of just see Jesus doing this. Like, you can just see Jesus, all these people weeping and wailing, right? Because this girl has died. And he could just see Jesus going, yeah, okay, all right, come on, let's go, ow. And then shutting the door. Because there is nothing you could do with people who simply cannot and do not have faith that there's this possibility. But let's remember something here. It's not that the woman is made whole because she touches his cloak. It's not that the girl is raised from the dead because he takes her by the hand. They are both restored and made whole because they are in the presence of Jesus. We think that sometimes there are certain things we have to do in order to accomplish or to get something that we want. So this woman firmly believed she needed to touch the cloak. It wasn't that. It was the faith that she had that the cloak was on the person of Jesus. That faith is what made her whole, not the cloak. Going up into the upper room, it was only because Jairus believed that he was the one who could make this happen. He could have done this from a distance, and we know in other stories with the centurion's servant, Jesus simply says the word and it is accomplished at a difference. But no, what is it? Jesus simply comes into the presence of these people. He is in their presence, and I have shared this with you time and time again. Every single encounter of anyone who has come into the presence of Jesus is changed and transformed. Always. Read the Gospels. Every single time anyone has gotten themselves into the presence of Jesus, recognized Jesus as being the Lord and Savior, as being the one who can help and assist, of being there, that at that moment in time, those people's lives, situations, and circumstances are changed. And that same reality of faith relationship is ours. The one thing I want us to just clarify a little bit, and this came up this week a little bit in a phone call I had with an individual. There is a difference between faith and discipleship. Let me say that again. There is a distinction between faith and discipleship. Faith gets us into this relationship with God. We accept what God has accomplished, God the Father, through his Son Jesus, by his cross and resurrection. Faith gets us that. From that point on, there is nothing we can do to increase what God has already done, accomplished, and has provided to us as a free gift. That is done. Faith gets us that. And it is impossible for us to lose. Salvation is impossible for us to lose because ultimately that's what Jesus came to do. His cross, his death, has a meaning and purpose, and that meaning and purpose spans through all generations. Once we say yes, even though we are messed up and whatnot, absolutely, without doubt, our faith gets us that salvation, and Jesus' love and the blood of his cross establishes all of that for us. It is not removable. It is not something that we can lose. That does not mean that we do not try to follow the life and the example and the model of Jesus Christ. That's discipleship. We have been saved, and because of what we have received, and hopefully, because of what we have experienced, the love of God in our lives, we then decide that we want to live lives that mimic and model that of Jesus Christ. That's discipleship. Whether or not we are good disciples or not, doesn't really matter. We're going to try. We should try. We would want to try. We've been loved. We know we've been loved. God has provided and promised us that God would be with us all the time. This is the question that came up to me last night when I was thinking about this reading. I was thinking to myself, okay, so what happens if this woman came up and she touched the cloak of Jesus, but she wasn't physically cured? And I found myself thinking that the fact that she was in the presence of Jesus, the fact that Jesus recognized her and had a relationship with her was probably as life-giving as the blood stopped flowing. So sometimes in our lives, and especially in hospitals, when people are sick and they ask us to pray for them, and ultimately what we want is not accomplished, the question then comes, well, how come that person wasn't cured? But I'm not really sure that's the right question, or perhaps that's not the right outcome. You cannot tell me in both of these cases, Jairus' family, the woman, the crowd around Jesus pressing in, remember, Rockefeller Christmas tree crowd, all these people, that their lives were not changed because of the presence of Jesus. And I think for us, we should be looking for a living experience of the presence of Jesus Christ in our life. That's simple. And all we have to do is ask for it and pay attention for it. That's all we have to do. It's that simple. But just like we're so easily distracted from everything else we do, we were at dinner last night with some dear friends. There's 4 of us at the table. They're having a conversation. 2 of them are having a conversation, and one gets distracted and turns and starts talking to me out of nowhere. No choice, just turned her attention, right? Right, Donna? On a dime. And it ended up being hysterically funny because we were just having a conversation, but this woman got distracted and ended up talking to me. Well, of course, I'm a better person to talk to than the other person, but that's besides the point. The fact of the matter is that in just a split instant, her attention was diverted. And tell me if that doesn't remind you of us. As much as right now we're sitting in this place, and as a community we know that Jesus is present, and as a community we are all affirmed that Jesus is present here. As much as we know that when we leave here and we get into the car and we get down to the light and someone cuts us off or someone won't let us in or someone steals our parking spot at the Stop and Shop, it's going to be really easy to forget that Jesus is still in our life. We get very easily distracted. But I think the biggest grace in these stories is not the miracle. The miracle is wonderful. It's not the miracle. It's the fact that Jesus goes with Jairus, even though Jairus is a synagogue leader and does not necessarily believe in Jesus. It's the fact that Jesus approaches and talks to a woman that no one else would want to talk to. And oh, by the way, show me in either one of these stories where Jesus has done these miraculous, powerful, incredible miracles for these people. You show me where they were baptized. You show me where they went to church or synagogue or lessons. You show me where they had to take certain studies in order to receive what it was that God gave them. You tell me what hoops did they possibly have to jump over in order to deserve Jesus' reaction and response and help in their life? There is none. And yet we are so quick at saying that people cannot come, cannot be, cannot whatever, unless they do X, Y, and Z. I don't understand any of that because it's not how Jesus was. So why do we do it? Why do we force people into things? Look, I'm not saying that proper education, learning about the scriptures, all that stuff does not help us grow in our relationship with God. They absolutely do. They are not mandatory for having a relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm sorry, they're simply not, because none of these people ever did any of those things in any way, shape, or form. And Jesus acts profoundly in their life. We have to recognize that God is so much bigger than what we have packaged God into in religion. We have to realize that the presence of God is something that we should be sensitive to as often as we can in the course of a day, because in that sensitivity to God's presence comes our hope, comes our love, our self-worth, comes our meaning and purpose. Not all this other stuff. Because in these stories, Jesus cares more about the individuals, even he himself, becoming impure and unclean according to the law of his day, the religious law of his day. He doesn't care about that. He cares about them. He cares about us. So why do we think that there's certain things we have to do or accomplish that could get us any more closer to God than what we already are? I think it's because we haven't been taught what is truly the good news. And the good news is that God loves us and has redeemed us. And all we have to do is accept that gift. All we have to do is accept that gift and place ourselves, as Jairus and Jairus' daughter and this woman did, place ourselves in the presence of Jesus Christ. God bless you.